had a bad reading month. Hey, hi, hello, how are you? I'm Pia, and today we're talking about all of the books that I read in April. I just realized this. I'm wearing like the same color I wore in my retro up. I love green. I think I had a bad reading month. I didn't read nearly as much as I normally do. I had long periods of time where I wasn't reading. I didn't really like love anything I read, or if I did, I just like, I don't know what happened. I had some 5 stars, some good books, some like just meh. I just was not feeling like reading this month, and finally towards the end of the month, I built back up my momentum. As you saw in my 24 hours of reading video, I finally like got back into the swing of reading, but it took a while to get there. That was the last day of the month. So still quite a few to get through, so let's get into it. The first book that I read this month was The Mirror Season by Anna Marie McLemore. This is my second Anna Marie McLemore, and my favorite by far. I DNF'd Self-Made Boys. This is about a girl who was sexually assaulted at a party and a guy who was also sexually assaulted at that party. And they are two halves of this kind of mirror, and they have this really interesting relationship. They start developing a relationship, and they are, you know, like, and she is the only one that like remembers him there and has kind of to deal with that burden alone. I really like this book. I think that it handled those topics, those very sensitive topics, very well. It also had this kind of like magical realism thread going throughout. One which I liked was the discussions around baking. Our main character has this like innate ability to like know what baked good would like solve someone's problems and I really liked the descriptions of those sorts of like baked goods and stuff. But there is another like thread which is like this like mirror thing that she is seeing. She's seeing things turn into mirrors and are breaking into glass shards, and she's collecting these shards. This didn't really work for me. Sometimes a good metaphor is all you need. That's about it. I don't know. I didn't love that. I gave it 4 stars though. I did really enjoy my time reading it. It's a heavy book, but it is done well. Then I read I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This is my second Ian Reid. I picked this up for my 5-star predictions video because I read We Spread by Ian Reid at the beginning of this year and loved it, gave it 5 stars. So this one was not a 5-star for me. I think I've said this before, but there's something about like respect for your reader, and I don't think bamboozling your reader and doing a gotcha is really that respectful to your reader, and I don't like appreciate that. In reading books, I don't appreciate when they're like, haha, you just read that whole thing and like it was like, I can't believe you fell for that, and like I don't like that because then I'm like, why did I read it? I'm not telling you what happens in this book. This is not a spoiler. Does the gotcha thing, and I don't like the gotcha thing. Anyway, I do think the build-up was there. Like I enjoyed the ride I was going on with him. I am interested in watching the movie because I've heard interesting things about it. I've heard mixed things, but yeah, I don't know. It wasn't my favorite time. I kind of didn't love. Gave it 3 stars. Then I read a great book, and like maybe this saved the reading month. I'm not sure. I read Disorientation. This book came out of nowhere. It came out of left field for me. I saw it at the library, and that's why I don't have a physical copy. Maybe that's why I'm like meh about this reading month, because I don't have physical copies of some of the books I really liked. But I got it from the library because I just saw it there and I was like, I've seen you before. Let me just read it. And I love when I do that. This is about a PhD student, and she is writing her dissertation on this famous canonically famous Chinese poet, and she kind of got like gaslit, kind of like pigeonholed into writing this dissertation because she is Taiwanese and she basically was just told to write this, that like she has to write this. And in her procrastination mostly of writing this, she falls down this rabbit hole that kind of changes everything that she knows, and she learns stuff that will just change the world kind of, or the world as they know it in this book. And it is nuts. And sometimes something is so crazy that you're like, that could happen. You know what I mean? You're like, that is so nuts. I'm sure it's happening. Like, I'm sure it's presently happening. It has everything that I've been really enjoying reading about lately, which is like the process of translation and what that means to like translate. How do you translate culture? Like people's obsessions with different cultures, like in fetishization and like whiteness in academia, and like it is so interesting. It is having so many necessary conversations and doing so in a very like satirical and like loud way. I loved it. I loved this book. I really want more people to read it. I've heard like basically you either love it or hate it, but I loved it. I thought it was so good, and yeah, I gave it 5 stars. The next book I read was A Man Called Uwe. I don't know where my copy is. I genuinely, Mom, where is it? I let my mom borrow books from me sometimes, and this was one I bought, and I gave it to her like after I read it. I had like a deadline to read it, and I don't know where it is. Anyway, I read A Man Called Uva because I've been kind of just like making my way downtown, making my way through Frederick Bachman's backlist because I love him. I love him so much. Now we have Uva, and he sucks. Like, he sucks, you know? And he's like, I think he's only like 55 or something, which is like my parents' age. So funny to me that he's like this curmudgeon-y old man. He's supposed to be like the guy from Up or whatever. But he's like bad opinions, like heartless. But then you just kind of like slowly, it is revealed like Grinch style what's going on, and like he is. And man, did they get me emotional. Was it my favorite Frederick Bachman? Absolutely not. But I do think it was done well, and I think that like slow character build, I wouldn't even call it, I guess I could call it character development, but I also think that there's a lot to his character there that like is just slowly revealed throughout the story, and like the multi-dimensions of his character, and you kind of have this past and present timeline that kind of reveal more and more about who this guy is and what his motivations are and where he's coming from. And sure, he is a mess, but he also like is great. I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I'm interested to watch the movie that they did with Tom Hanks, but I also haven't heard great things. Seems like all of these books I'm talking about have been turned into movies. If you want to see a like react review on any of these, let a girl know. Those are my favorite videos to make. They're very annoying to make, but I love them. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Honey and Spice. This is a romance book, and this is one I thought I would really enjoy. I love romance books. It is just so hard for me to find a romance book that I love, and I feel like that is like a big contradiction, but I think it makes sense. Like, I love the experience of reading romance books, but there are so few that I like genuinely love because I need a lot of things in a romance book. I need chemistry, I need a good balance of plot, I need a lot of things. Anyway, this book intrigued me because it is following a very strong main character who has this like radio talk show where she like gives love advice and then also plays love songs, and it's about like her in college. I think she's supposed to be around my age, which is and she kind of has to team up with the like playboy on campus because who she like talked trash about on her podcast or on her radio show, because I don't know, they like fake date, and then they also have to work on this like project together because he's a filmmaker, and like she's trying to like expand her resume and trying to get into like a scholarship or something. The setup was there. It had all the like workings to be something I enjoyed, but I didn't love it. I don't know. I wish I remembered. What happened was, I think the third act breakup was something that really annoyed me, and the characters started acting a little bit childish for my taste. It just had some like veered into some like tropes that I didn't enjoy, even though it had a great setup, so I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Witchlings. This is the first Witchlings book. I love this book. This was so sweet. We are following our like spare witches. So witches in this world are witchlings until they get sorted into their coven, but some witches don't get sorted, and those are called spares. And spares are kind of like the outcasts of society. They are treated as less than. They are like sometimes lose their magic. They're really like made to serve people and not really allowed to do much else. And our main character is like, heck to the nah, I ain't no spare. And there's like this one rule that like if you complete this what is it called, impossible task, you will be able to like be granted full witchdom. And I really liked the story. I really liked all the characters. I loved our main character, Seven, especially. I liked that it had these kind of like harder conversations in a middle grade setting, and I just thought it was a fun time. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I will definitely continue with the series. Then I read Everything I Never Told You for my book club at school. This is by Celeste Ng. Okay, we read this because we wanted to read a sad book. Oh boy. This was not the month for me to read something sad. It was absolutely not the month. I read this book and I enjoyed it. Like, I think it was well done in some ways. I don't think that the resolution in this book was particularly great. It doesn't wrap a lot of things up, and I think some of the characters' actions are a bit of like questionable at best. Like, I didn't really see the development of that relationship there, but okay. But other than that, I do think that it's a solid book. I think that it's having some important conversations, and I think that it is like a definitely like hard book to read. It's fucking depressing. I think it's doing what it's trying to do for the most part, and I give it 4 stars. Then I read Anne of Angleside. These are my cute little pocket editions. Yes, I have many editions, guys. Anyway, this is Anne of Angleside. This is the 6th and of A Gables book. I am trucking along reading these ones. They are getting worse. They're not great. They're not going great. And A Gables is my favorite book of all time. It's my favorite story of all time. So I need to like stop being a fake fan and like actually finish the series. But this one, we're veering away. We're starting to veer away from Anne as our main character, but basically the plot of this is we're following her kids a lot more. We're getting to know them. Her not mother-in-law, her aunt-in-law is visiting, and she is causing trouble. And then I think this part is stupid. And then like in the last like couple of chapters, she like thinks Gilbert doesn't love her, and that's about the plot of this book. These are very slice of life. Like there's no overarching things going on in these books. There's no climax. Like you're not gonna find that, but they're usually very fun. This one I did enjoy. I did like starting to understand her kids more and seeing their personality shine. It was nice when we got to hear from each of them and hear their distinct voices. As always, I don't like when Anna's in the background, but she did come out a few times during the course of this book. I gave it 5 stars because it's really hard for me not to give it a Lucy Maud book 5 stars. Then I read This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. I call this the most Libra book ever. Oh my gosh, indecision at its best. It is a time travel book following our main character, who's a Libra. Canon. It's canon. It's on page. And she is not having a great go of it. You know, her dad is sick. And her dad is this like famous author of this like time travel book that got adapted in a series and it was like very famous. And she is lost in life, right? And she, on her 40th birthday, has this experience where she travels back in time to her 16th birthday. And now she can only travel back in time to that exact day, her 16th birthday. And so she keeps going back, keeps changing things, keeps coming back to the present timeline and seeing how that works out. And all the while she's just trying to like have more time with her father, have her father not be sick anymore, like understand what's going on. And it's a really great like exploration of like this father-daughter relationship. I love that. I also just love how Libra it is. Imagine like you get the chance to time travel, like you can do anything. You could keep making changes. Like when are you ever going to be happy with it? This was my first Emma Straub and I read 2 Emma Straub books this month, so I love them both. But I give this 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was like a really great time travel book. Like it's hard to do time travel, but I really liked the simplicity of this one and the kind of all the like nods to classic time travel stories as well. So next up I read Arasha and the End of Time. I for some reason was in a middle grade mood this month, but this is a book that I've had on my radar for a really long time. It's one of the Rick Riordan Presents books, so it is like following mythology. It is following Indian mythology, which is very cool. So we follow Arasha, and she is a Pandava, and she and Minnie, her like sister, quote unquote, have to go on this big adventure to save Aru's mom and also to journey to the kingdom of death and stop the sleeper, who's a demon, before they can awaken the god of destruction. This was, again, a really fun middle grade. It had all the charm of a Percy Jackson book, and that's why I'm going to be like comparing it to that. It really had like the same fun, fresh energy and tone. I really liked Arasha as a main character. She definitely had her faults, and I really appreciate that, especially in like kids books. She like loved making up stories, and she kind of had a bit of an ego on her, but I really love seeing her and Minnie's relationship develop, and also just seeing them kind of come into their own and discovering things about this world that they're in, and also just like trying to always save the day. I give them 4 out of 5 stars. I'll definitely continue with the series. Next up, I read romantic comedy. This book I picked up because I picked up the audiobook from the library. I ironically wanted to buy this book for my mother, and then she bought it for me because we are one mind. I really enjoyed this book. This is about a late night writer, late night live comedy show. It's about a Saturday Night Live writer and how she falls in love with a guest star, a guest host. He's the host and the musical guest. Do not forget. He does it all. And it's so sweet. And so like they fall in love a little bit. But then the panorama hit and, you know, all hell breaks loose. They kind of reconnect a little bit. And then they see where things go, you know? So I really like this book. I really, again, liked our main character. She's very unlikable. She like is like, I'm a bitch. Like, I don't care. Like, I admit it. Like, leave me alone. And I love that. She's unapologetic. I love like I feel like her world was built up really well, like her past relationships and loves and her like family relationships. I feel like that was all really well established. And then there's of course the romance, which like I loved. It was stinking cute, okay? This guy is like a puppy dog. Like he's the best. I don't know. The only thing I will say that I didn't love is the like heavy influence of the Pandora's box on this. I'm not gonna say it. On this book. A good section of this is told in emails. It's like epistolary, which is not my favorite. It was kind of cute for a little bit and then it was like a little bit annoying, but I like that it brought them back together and didn't fall into too many of like the tropes that I don't like in romance books. I feel like it had a really good like solid structure that didn't bother me. So yeah, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was very, very cute and I would recommend it. Then I read Rainbow Valley, again by Ellen Montgomery. This is the 7th book in the Anne of Green Gables series. This one was my least favorite. I don't understand this one at all. This one follows not only, well, like barely the kids that like we got to know in the previous book, like Anne's kids. It follows like this random other group of kids move in and their shenanigans and like who cares? I don't know. It was also just very Christian guilty, which was also not my favorite. This one I give 4 stars. It has her writing, which like gives a lot, but the plot left a lot to be desired. I'm just saying. Then I read How High We Go in the Dark. I read this for class because I had to read a short story collection of my choosing, and this is the one I did so choose. This is about an Arctic plague in the year 2030, and then it just kind of progresses from there. Again, it's a short story collection, so each story follows a different person, different narrator, different central main character, all dealing with this very interesting virus in their own ways. This virus is so interesting and I want to tell you about it. Okay, so your like lung cells transform into like heart cells, or like your brain cells transform into like lung cells, and like what? It's so creative. But anyway, it is like a very sad book. Like this book, I would say like the main themes are like grief and loneliness. It's tough out there, but I really, really enjoyed this book. Some of my favorite stories were The Scope of Possibility, Pig Son, City of Laughter, and Melancholy Nights in a Tokyo Virtual Cafe. I didn't love the more like abstract chapters. There's only a couple of those. There were some that just kind of like didn't hit as hard, but I did really like the interconnectedness of the stories and kind of the through line that was going throughout that I can't tell you much about, but I ended up giving this collection as a whole 4 stars. Next up, I read The Final Revival of Opal and Nev. This is a book that I recommended in my Daisy Jones and the Six recommendations video. I think this is a very similar story. The audiobooks are also similar. They're both full cast. This is about an interracial music duo from the 70s, and their names are Opal and Nev, wouldn't you know? It's just about like how they came together, how they're like, they rose to fame, and then now they're like going on this revival tour. The things I didn't like about this were kind of how all over the place it was. It was trying to accomplish so many things. It had so many different timelines that it was dealing with, you know, past the revival tour and then the present. So too many things. I also didn't really like how much of a role the interviewer or like the narrator, I guess, played. Like there was a whole like chapter where she was just like discussing with her team like why they should make this book, and I was like, I don't care. Like I didn't care, but I did really like it. I think Opal was like my favorite character, and I think that it had interesting kind of highs and lows and plot points and stuff like that that were surprising and interesting, but it wasn't like, it didn't like strike a real chord with me, unfortunately, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Strike a chord? Music? What? Then I read Better Together by Christine Riccio. This book was so fun. I don't know how to recommend this book, to be honest, because I think you have to be in a really specific mindset to read this book. This is a book about sisters. It is about sisters who are separated, so it's got the Parent Trap aspect there, but it's also got the Freaky Friday aspect, so it's got magic. And it's just like, I can't talk about this book or think about it without like giggling because it's so silly. Because if I don't think about it in this like funny, silly, goofy way, it's fucked up. So I have to think about it in a silly, goofy way. And that's the lens you should go into reading this book with, because I grew to love the characters. There's great romances, plot is very, very fun, and it feels like familiar in that nice like nostalgic kind of way, and I liked it. Like I had a good time reading it. I didn't take it too seriously, and it was a good time. If you like Christine's other book, I'm sure you would like this one. It's just even more like laugh out loud hilarious, what are you doing? And I gave it 4 stars. Then I read another Emma Straub book. This is All Adults Here. This I read because I had it. I don't have it with me, but I had it. These I all read for my how many books can I read in 24 hours video, if you haven't checked that out. This is about a like matriarch and her 3 children and their children, and kind of just how they are navigating adulthood. Mother of the family is kind of like coming into this new life experience and realizing more things about herself that she didn't think she would so much later in her life. Her daughter is pregnant and is dealing with like old loves and like old flames and getting ready for motherhood and feeling like she's not ready maybe, or not ready to be an adult yet. We have like the youngest, who is my favorite character, you know, taking on an adult role like as a kid and what that means, and like I really liked it. I think it had some really great conversations happening in this book, and I really loved the dynamics between all of the like siblings and the mother and her kids and stuff like that, and I thought it was really good. My favorite character was Cecilia because I love smart kids. I love when authors treat kids like they're adults in some ways, but then also have other kind of very like kiddie things coming out as well, and having that balance I really like. I just thought it was really good. It was really good. It was heartfelt. I really enjoyed like tabbing it. It was a good one. I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in April was Mother Thing. This book I read again because I thought I was really gonna enjoy it. I like weird horror. This one didn't go too horror for me, and like I don't know what that was about, because it didn't do like a literary horror thing where it was like the horrific thing is like life itself, and I was like, oh no, but it didn't do that. It just like didn't go there, which I say a lot of the time. Sometimes I just want books to take that extra step, that extra leap that sometimes doesn't happen, and that is kind of how I felt reading Mother Thing. There were aspects of it that I liked, and like moments or scenes that I thought really did go that extra mile, but other parts did not. This is a book about a woman who recently lost her mother-in-law to suicide, and her husband is kind of spiraling after this death, and is like seeing her, being haunted by her, and she like does not really care. Obviously she had that kind of like mother-in-law daughter-in-law relationship that is kind of classic and tropey, and she is just ready to be a mother herself, and she just wants to kind of like put the past in the past and start a family, but she's also haunted by this presence. I liked it. I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars. Somehow I feel like that took me longer than normal months. I don't know. But anyways, those are all the books that I read in April. Hoping to have a better reading month in May. So far it's going pretty well, but you'll have to stay tuned for my May wrap up and my reading vlogs and all that shenanigans later in the month. But I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to let me know what your favorite book you read in April was, or just how your reading month went in general, I would love to know. And with that being said, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, and I will see you in my next video.